My name is Irena Sendler. They called me the Angel of Warsaw, but I was just a nurse who couldn't stand by and watch children die. While others built walls to separate, I built networks to save lives. I smuggled 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto, not because I was fearless, but because I was more afraid of doing nothing. This is how one woman, with a suitcase full of names, became the guardian of tomorrow's hope. I was born Irena Krzyżanowska in 1910 in Otwock near Warsaw. My father, Stanisław, was a doctor who treated everyone, rich, poor, Catholic, Jewish. He taught me that wszyscy ludzie są równi. All people are equal. When he died treating typhus patients in 1917, I learned that some things are worth risking everything for. At Warsaw University, I studied Polish literature and later social work. Even then, I saw injustice everywhere. The numerus clausus, limiting Jewish students. The growing anti-Semitism. I joined socialist groups, not because I loved politics, but because I loved people. My conscience was already being trained for what was coming. I became a social worker for Warsaw's welfare department. I worked in the poorest neighborhoods, where Polish and Jewish families live side by side in poverty. I learned their languages, their hopes, their fears. I didn't know then that these relationships would become lifelines when the world went mad. September 1939. The Germans came like a plague of locusts. Within months, they herded Warsaw's Jews into a walled ghetto. My Jewish colleagues lost their jobs. My friends disappeared behind brick walls. I watched a city I loved being torn apart by hatred, and I knew I had to act. I joined Żegota, the Council to Aid Jews. We were teachers, doctors, nurses, ordinary Poles who refused to accept the unacceptable. My mission was clear: get into the ghetto, document the conditions, and save who I could, especially the children. Dzieci są naszą przyszłością. Children are our future. As a health department employee, I got a permit to enter the ghetto under the pretext of preventing typhus epidemics. What I found inside was hell on earth: overcrowding, starvation, disease, despair, but also incredible courage. Jewish mothers would beg me, "Take my child, at least let one of us live." We developed dozens of ways to smuggle children out. Babies in suitcases, coffins with secret compartments, through sewage pipes hidden in supply trucks. I carried sedatives to keep babies quiet during transport. Each rescue felt like stealing hope from the jaws of death. I kept meticulous records, every child's real name, new identity, placement family. I buried these lists in glass jars under an apple tree in my friend's garden. Bez pamięci nie ma przyszłości. Without memory, there is no future. These children would need to find their way back to themselves someday. Every day brought new dangers. German inspections, suspicious guards, informants. Once, I had a baby hidden in a carpenter's box when guards searched our truck. The carpenter started hammering loudly to cover the baby's cries. We all held our breath, certain we were caught. But the child stayed silent, and we passed through. October 20th, 1943. My worst nightmare came true. The Gestapo arrested me at my apartment. Someone had betrayed our network. As they dragged me away, I prayed that the children we'd saved would survive, that our work would not die with us. They took me to Pawiak prison. For months, they tortured me, broke my feet, my legs, beat me unconsciously. They wanted the names of the children, the locations of the families, but I gave them nothing. Lepiej umrzeć stojąc niż żyć na kolanach. Better to die standing than live on your knees. January 1944. Żegota bribed a German guard to help me escape. He was supposed to execute me, but instead led me to freedom. I was listed as executed, which became my protection. From hiding, I continued coordinating rescues until Warsaw fell. During the Warsaw Uprising, I served as a nurse treating wounded fighters. The city I loved was being destroyed street by street, but the spirit of resistance burned brighter than the flames. We were fighting, not just for Poland, but for the idea that good must triumph over evil. After the war, I dug up my buried lists. Of the 2,500 children we saved, most parents had perished in the death camps. I tried to reunite families, but the Holocaust had broken the chain of generations. Many children stayed with their rescuer families. They had become their real families. The communist government wanted to erase the memory of Polish-Jewish cooperation. My story was buried along with so many others. For decades, I lived quietly as a nurse and social worker, watching the children I saved grow up, have families, build lives. That was reward enough. In 1965, Yad Vashem recognized me as righteous among the nations, but the Polish government wouldn't let me travel to Israel. They feared acknowledging the Holocaust would undermine their narrative. The tree they planted for me in Jerusalem grew while I remained unknown in my own country. In 1999, American high school students researching the Holocaust discovered my story. Their project, Life in a Jar, brought international attention to what we had done. Suddenly, at age 89, I was famous worldwide. But fame was never the point. Saving lives was. My final years brought honors I never sought. Nominations for Nobel Peace Prize, meetings with presidents, documentaries about my life. But the greatest honor was meeting the survivors and their children, seeing the families that existed because we refused to surrender to hatred. When I died in 2008, at age 98, I left behind no great fortune, no monuments to myself, but I left something more precious. 2,500 lives that became thousands more descendants. Dobro zawsze zwycięża. Good always triumphs, but only if good people choose to act. Today, my story is told in schools worldwide. The apple tree where I buried the lists is gone, but the memory lives on. Every child who learns about the Warsaw Ghetto learns that one person with courage can make a difference. That is my true monument. I was no saint, no superhero. I was a Polish nurse who saw children dying and decided to do something about it. I chose to smuggle hope instead of supplies, to plant futures instead of flowers. Remember this: evil is powerful, but it is not stronger than a human heart that refuses to surrender to hatred. Każde życie ma wartość. Every life has value. Save one life, save the world entire.